Hello, and thank you for downloading audio from Crosspoint Church. To find out more about Crosspoint, visit us online at www.crosspointga.com.
All right, how many of you guys have started your Christmas movie marathons? All right, yes. Charlie Brown Christmas, anybody representing right here? Yes. It was Danielle's pick for us to watch the Charlie Brown Christmas. And man, that was like, what, from the 60s or something like that? It's old school. And it's still pertinent because Charlie Brown is constantly complaining about the materialization of Christmas, right? Everybody's just focused on stuff. And Snoopy, he had his doghouse just decorated with lights and all these stuff. And it really reminded me of just how that is still a thing. And even with supply chain issues, it's still a thing, the materialization of Christmas. And let me ask you this. What did you want for Christmas last year? What did you want for Christmas last year? You don't have to say it, because if you're like underwear, that's going to be embarrassing for you. So I don't want to do that to you. And I know you kids are like, socks and underwear. That's what I wanted. And that's what you always get. Because it's an opportunity for your parents to put something under the tree that is both cheap and a necessity. And so that's why they do it. So you've learned something new. That's why we do it. But anyway, what did you want for Christmas last year? And here's the thing. Here's the big question. Does it still matter like you thought it would before you got it? Chances are the answer to that is no. That thing that you had to have, that you wanted, that, man, you were just had to have, it was going to solve all your problems. It was just going to fill a void in some way, shape, or form, whether it was in your entertainment or your work or your wardrobe or whatever satisfaction that you thought it would bring. Chances are right now, you don't really want it anymore. You probably got rid of it, or it broke, or it just didn't do what you thought it would this time of year. And the scriptures talk about that concept. In the book of Proverbs 27:29, it says this: hell and destruction are never full. Some of your versions will say never satisfied. So the eyes of man are never satisfied. Man, isn't that true? That you and I constantly want something else. That there is a ending. Thank you. 1,000 points. Desire for more stuff. I can't even get it out. But yeah, what is it with us? Why are we that way? And many of you, I think my kids were watching a movie that had Rockefeller Center in it. Rockefeller Center, you know, that's where like the biggest tree in the country, New York, right? They have it in there, and it's huge, and I don't know if it's the biggest one in the country, but it's the biggest one in the city of New York City, and it has like thousands of lights on it, and it's something that, man, it's like, wow, right? Well, Rockefeller was this very, very generous, but also very wealthy oil tycoon. And he was quoted, and people speculate as to whether he said this or not, but it's something that is just, you Google Rockefeller and you see this quote, and it is this. He was asked by a reporter, how much money is enough? Very wealthy man. He responded, just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. A person who had was the richest man in the country. And he just wanted a little bit more. Now, whether that he said it or not, it rings true for each of us, because for some reason, and I think back to when I first started working, McDonald's, right? Anybody else? First job, McDonald's? Yeah, okay. Right? Free food, rotted your, guts and stuff. But anyway, and man, they didn't have near the preservatives they did back then than they do now. But anyway, McDonald's was my first job. Actually became a night manager there at the age of 17, youngest one they ever had. Anyway, trying to think of what I meant with McDonald's. Oh, right. My wages. So when I started out at McDonald's, wait for it. Who can guess? 1997, what my hourly wage was? $25. Negative. $4.25. Yes. $4.25. Right? And my kids are like, man, I don't make a lot. Well, and gas was like 97 cents or something like that. But anyway, yeah, remember when? But when I first started working out at McDonald's, I was like, man, if I could just make $5 an hour, right? $5 an hour. Lord, give me $5 an hour, and that I'll never ask you for another thing. Right? And then it was like, well, how about $7 an hour? You know, $7 an hour. And now like different parts of the country are like making 15, and it's like $4.25 an hour. But for some reason, right, we are never satisfied. We get that amount that we ask God for, and now it's like, Lord, okay, if you can give me, and it never ends. And for some reason, that just drives us. But this morning, as Josh was reading in the Scriptures, there are some gentlemen that were mentioned in the Scriptures and actually find themselves in the Christmas story that I would like to say were the Rockefellers of their time, the Magi. Which is fun to say. Sounds better than the Wisemen. But yeah, the Magi, they were the Rockefellers of their time. And they find themselves in the Christmas story. And man, there's a lot of rumor and tradition that kind of flows around the Wisemen, because most of us are understanding that there were 3 of them. Now, the Scriptures don't say that. But we find that from early church tradition: Belshazzar, Melchior, and Casper, or Gasper, depending on which things you find yourself reading as far as church history and stuff like that. But according to Western tradition, these guys were kings of Persia, that area, and they were traveling from the Middle East, the Mesopotamian area, to Bethlehem. Now, many speculate, we don't know where exactly they came from, but it's anywhere from 400 miles to 700 miles that these guys traveled on camel. Okay? So camel, right? Not your, it's not a Mercedes, it's not even a Prius, but the miles per gallon were amazing. And they made it there in, we don't know how long. Many would say it was probably months, weeks, but definitely not days. And complicating their travel was the fact that they had to travel at night so they could follow the star. So these guys really went through a lot of pains to find themselves following a star for some strange reason to Bethlehem. Now, how and what led to this? Many speculate it was either special revelation. Remember, an angel warned them in a dream about Herod and not going back to him. Some speculate, did God... Another dream, many think a Jewish scholar could have traveled to there with copies and scrolls, and then they kind of got into these prophecies and decided to follow. We don't actually know, but there was something in these Rockefellers, something in these Magi, something in these wealthy people that led them to desire to inconvenience themselves in such a fashion and risk their lives in a way to come to a Roman province in a political upheaval with wealth and money that they needed to travel with to find a baby, to find a Messiah. Why? You ever think about that? Yeah, the wise men, you travel. Why? What compels a people to do this? I would like to submit to you that it is something that is inside of us as well. Something in you and me, you and I, that wants and makes us desire to do things like that. And it is referred to by Blaise Pascal in this way, and you maybe heard of this, that God-shaped hole. Now, I don't know much about this guy, but I think he threaded the needle in regards to this aspect. What else does this craving and this helplessness proclaim but that there once in man a true happiness. There once was in man a true happiness, of which all that now remains is the empty print and trace. This he tries in vain to fill with everything around him, seeking in things that are not there to help, he cannot find in those that are. Though no one can help, since this infinite abyss can be filled only with an infinite and immutable object. In other words, by God Himself. There is in something, in you and in me, that we just can't seem to fill. And around Christmas time, there is such an opportunity to shove in that God-shaped hole stuff. The new iPhone 13. I think that's the latest one. You never know. Right? That new thing that's going to fill that void. Something that we can desire, whether a substance, an item, a person, right? Your relationship status. That's going to fix whatever that gaping hole inside you and I tends to be. Man, I had some really rough conversations this week. I had 3 heavy conversations throughout the course of both this week and last that I just rested heavy on me and really proved this point. One individual I was talking with, his father was diagnosed with cancer at I think 57, and he was not going to seek treatment for it. And the day before he found out his dad had cancer, he broke off his engagement. And man, he was just like so heavy. And I got to present the gospel with him and share Christ with him. And he is just really wrestling with some things. Another person was just talking to me at work about their daughter just completely left their home, dropped out of school, and is living in a hotel that is known to be housing those who have addiction issues. Another individual, their daughter just went trans all of a sudden. And it's just like, man, those weigh heavy on us. And yet at the same time, in each individual, there's this illusion that one of those things is going to solve and fill that hole. Right? That changing our sexual orientation is going to fill that, or something else. All of us face something and try and fill that God-shaped hole with something. And what I see beautifully well done in the Christmas story is that the wise men figured out what this was. And here's what I want to declare to you this morning is that the wise men saw that we have hope because God has given us Jesus. That the thing, as Pascal had said, that fits and fills that hole is an immutable object that is not found in a store. It can't be shipped in 2 days or longer. It is Jesus Christ. And man, that brings us such a hope. It gives me such a hope. And it also makes me a hope giver and a hope dealer in a way that just transcends everything. So let's pick up where we see in the Christmas story, Matthew 2. We're going to be Matthew 2 this morning. And what we see, and I'm sorry, this decimates the Christmas story, the manger scene in a fashion, okay? It's going to do that. Just set yourself up. The little manger scene that you've got out in your yard, if it has the wise men there, it is inaccurate. And you need to just maybe move the wise men to a different area of your home. And I'm sorry, but you're going to see where that is. I don't want to decimate your Christmas this morning, so please, children, mothers, if your children are present, you may want to shield them from these things. Oh. You guys are nuts. All right. Anyway, this is rated PG-13. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of King Herod, wise men from the east arrived unexpectedly in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." So again, don't know what compelled these guys, whether it was some form of dream, special revelation, whether it was them going through the scriptures with a really cool Jewish scribe or something like that. We don't know, but we do know that they came here looking and following a star. And man, the beautiful thing in this is the wise men were looking for someone no one else was. Just think about that. I mean, Jesus is under the nose of most of these people. And some foreigners were the ones looking for it. It's just amazing. And I think it's that God-shaped hole that is compelling these guys in such a fashion. Then in verse 3, when King Herod heard this, he was deeply disturbed. Just, again, look at that. Deeply disturbed about the news. And I don't know if the Christmas story rubs you that way. And if it does, let it. So he assembled all the chief priests and scribes of the people and asked them where the Messiah would be born. In Bethlehem of Judea, they told him, because this is what was written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the leaders of Judah, because out of you will come a leader who will shepherd my people Israel. And Micah was the one who told us all about that. Not my son Micah. Micah, there you go. What are you guys doing back there? Never done this before, but it used to be done to me when I was a kid at church. Like, hey, you guys pay attention. Come back there. All right, anyway. It's in Micah 5:2. So if you wanted to ever find out where that prophecy was. So in this story, we see something happening, something going on. Herod comes on the scene, and I just want to ask you a question. What has God been putting in your orbit that is pointing you towards Jesus? Because in last week's message we saw, or 2 weeks ago actually, Mary was given this something to consider. Something to consider, and it was Elizabeth. Mary had this tension of, do I believe the angel? What's going on here? You're not doing it in normal ways. And the angel says, consider Elizabeth. Elizabeth is pregnant, proving that God was at work doing something that no one said could be done. Because she was an older lady who was with child, and Mary sees Elizabeth and her heart is stirred, and she's like, man, this is for real. Okay, in this Christmas story, we see Herod is given the wise men. So wise men come on the scene declaring that the Messiah has been born, and that was his something to consider. And that did something wrong and bad in Herod because he was greatly disturbed. Okay, what is it in you and I? What is it in you and I that God is pointing towards and is the star, so to speak, that is declaring and getting our attention and giving us something to pursue? What is it in you this year that is pointing you towards Jesus? Or consequently, what is it that is taking you away from him? Because everybody has a star at some point. Everybody has a something to consider. It may not be a star in the heavens. It may not be, 3 or a couple dozen wise men from, Asia. What is it though? What is it for you that God is getting your attention with? That God is leading you to? It could be a tragedy. It could be me. It could be a pastor. It could be something going on at work. It could be something going on in your family. Something that is driving you, compelling you, platforming, hey, look to Christ. Now, that is either going to disturb you or that is going to give you hope. It is going to give you something that brings you, that compels you, that draws you to Jesus. Because that is exactly what is going on in this story. It could be a blessing of some kind. It could be tragedy. And let me tell you, as I spoke to 3 people this week, there is no shortage of tragedy. There is no shortage of tragedy in our day. And as good as we have it in America, every life still has something going on. And chances are someone in here has something going on and you've got it secret. You're not telling anybody about it. You haven't shared it with me. You've got a close-knit group of people. It's a relationship of some kind. It's something going on with your finances, your health. Fill in the blank, an addiction of some kind. What is it? Because God has placed something in your orbit pointing you towards Him. Always something. And man, either that is going to disturb you or that is going to compel you to go to Jesus. Now, if you want to play the Herod, go ahead, let it disturb you. But it doesn't have to. Man, it doesn't have to. Verse 7. Then Herod secretly summoned the wise men and asked them the exact time the star appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. And when you find him, report back to me so that I too can go and worship him." Now Herod, for some reason, didn't go himself. But he sent these guys who were already just set in their hearts that they were going to find Jesus. But here's the thing. Herod couldn't go worship him. He couldn't, because he was already worshiping something else. There was already something in Herod's life that was taking first place. He had already had that square thing in the round-shaped hole that just wouldn't fit. Herod was already trying to shove power, prestige, fame, fortune, money, whatever was his driving force. He was trying to make that fit, to try and fill that God-shaped hole. And man, I don't know if you're playing the Herod this year, but you're trying to do that as well. You're trying to make something fit. And Herod couldn't do this. He couldn't go and worship. He couldn't even go with the wise men because he had something that he could not leave to pursue Jesus. Now, what is that? What is that for you? Oh, I'm at church, Pastor. I'm at church, Tommy. I'm already following Jesus. I'm at church. Yeah, okay. But you can't let go of something. Maybe it's money. You can't put anything in the offering box. You can't sacrificially give to missions because money matters too much to you. You can't follow Jesus and go further because, well, you've got the Toolbox Fallacy. That just popped into my head. Probably do something on. I was planning on doing some of that in the first of the year. The Toolbox Fallacy is this. You ever heard of that? I did a message on it, I think 2 years ago. So you probably. Obviously, you remember it because my preaching is so dynamic, and you're like, yeah, sure. But if you would, Pastor Tommy, just remind us of what that is. The Toolbox Fallacy is this, is that I can follow God when? Now, this applies to other things, right? I'll be a great husband once I get this job. I'll be a good provider once. I'll spend time with my kids. I'll pursue my wife's heart once. Right? I'll submit to my husband once he does this. Right? So it's this. I'll do this thing that I'm supposed to do once I have this tool or this item or this status or this posture or whatever that might be. And we apply that to so many areas of life, right? So I'll be a man of integrity once. Or I'll be generous once I get this raise, right? And then you get the raise and it's like, well, maybe now our situation's changed, so I'll be generous later on and further down the road. I'll do this for once. And we apply this to our relationship with God so many times. I'll get up and I'll serve God in a capacity once I have time to. I'll get up and I'll spend more time in the Word once this happens. And if God would just do this, then I'll do this. And so many times, for those of you who've been Christians for years now, you're sitting in here and you still haven't done that thing that God has compelled you to do, that God has impressed on your heart, that God has even equipped you in such a fashion to do, because you're waiting for Him to do something that He's already equipped you, led you to, and given you a passion for. And in this case, I want you to think about this. Think about all the magi who stayed home. Well, Belshazzar, Malchar, and Casper, we'd love to go with you to Bethlehem. I mean, we've seen these prophecies and all that, but, my business right now, I've got all these lands we're conquering militarily, and, I just can't make it. Maybe next year. Maybe next year. Think about the magi who stayed home. Think about, they didn't do anything wrong. I mean, you might say, well, Herod, he's trying to kill Jesus and stuff. What about the guys who just stayed home? Well, we can't make it out. We can't inconvenience ourselves. I mean, do you realize how long of a journey that is on camel? I just had hip surgery. I'm allergic to camel hair. All the excuses. All that they missed out. Maybe you're not even doing anything wrong, but you won't move. You won't move. You won't be compelled to be shaken or stirred in your current predicament, in your current status, because, well, you're comfortable right where you are. But think about what you'd miss. Think about what God has for you on the other side of that. Think about what these guys in the Christmas story who were able to move, who made the sacrifice, who were inconvenienced in a fashion to follow the star, to be moved to find Jesus. Verse 9, after hearing the king, they went on their way. And there was the star they had seen in the east. It led them until they came and stopped above the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they were overjoyed beyond measure. Now, got to ask you a question. What's giving you joy right now? What moves you to joy beyond measure? Maybe you don't have that. Maybe you don't have a joy beyond measure at all. Maybe there's nothing that stirs you. Maybe you're just not a joyous person at all. Or maybe you're moved beyond joy without measure because of what God's doing like what's going on in your career. Maybe even not what God's doing. Man, maybe you're overjoyed beyond measure because you've got a new boyfriend or girlfriend, and that's what's really just moving your heart. Maybe you're moved beyond joy without measure because of what you just purchased, right? Or what's going on in your finances right now. Maybe you're overjoyed beyond measure because of that thing that all of a sudden you realize right now in this moment that you've just turned into that thing that is going to satisfy. And man, you're just on this journey, but from thing to thing to thing that is going to fit the gaping hole that only God can fill. Well, I've got God, so I'm good. I'm okay. Yeah, but He's not, He may be in your repertoire, but He is not what's filling you. And He's not bringing you joy beyond measure. He's not. God may be in your sphere of influence. He may be in your orbit, but He is not center of your heart. And He is not moving you to overjoyed beyond measure. But the Magi found it. They found that just thing that fills us beyond measure. Verse 11. Entering the house. Dun, dun, dun. Sorry, I told you it was coming. Not a manger. They weren't in the stable. They weren't in a cave. Yes, they had made it into a house. So, sadly, the wise men, the Magi, were not at the manger scene with the donkeys and the sheep and all that stuff. I'm sorry. So move the wise men over to another side of the house or something like that. But, and furthermore, you'll see that it mentions the child, not an infant, not a newborn, but a child. So we don't know how many years, maybe it was a year, don't know what the status or the age of Jesus was. But entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother. Falling to their knees, they worshipped Him. Then they opened their treasures and presented Him with gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And when you want to circle back to the materialization, I almost couldn't say that now, of Christmas. Instead of hoarding treasures, instead of obtaining treasures, these wise men, these Magi, are now giving them away. Why? Because they found something worthy of worship. They found something worthy of worship, and it was Jesus. These wise men were no longer using gold to fill the void in their heart. There was no need to take myrrh and frankincense and all the value and uniqueness that was like the iPhone 14 of their era. There was no need to place that inside. There was no need to fill their hearts, their lives with riches and gold. No, now they're giving them away. Why? Because of the difference that finding Jesus made in their life. That Jesus was worthy of worship. The star's gone. You realize that. The star's gone. The star dissipates, it dissolves, it flies away. I don't know what it does. It rests on a Christmas cookie and then they eat it. I don't know what they did with it. But the star's no longer there anymore. Why? Because the thing that was leading them to Jesus was not the end goal. It was Jesus. The star, as valuable as it was in the months and weeks that they spent finding it, pursuing it, it led them to Jesus. And Jesus was it. They didn't give their gold, frankincense, and myrrh to a star. They didn't, get on Star Registry and name something after them, which would have been cool if they could do that back then. Actually, they did get to name them back then. But anyway, no, all of it was resting in Jesus. Now, the question for you and me is this morning, is are we wise? Are we actually sharing the passion that the wise men did? And it leads me to a couple questions. First off, what is your star? What is your star? Is it money, pain, fame? Pain. I don't know what pain is. Fame, respect, security? Is it a person? What is your star? What is the thing that you're pursuing? And is that thing leading you to Jesus? Because if it's not, then you're Charlie Brown Christmasing it. You've just found an innovative way to fill that void with the next thing that's going to give you joy and purpose. And let me just ask you this. How's that working for you? Are you really a joyous person because of the things that are making and taking your energy, your time, your money, your life, your passion? Are you a person of hope? Or are you playing Herod of your own kingdom? Your own personal kingdom that you rule over, that God can't touch, and that isn't going to get anything from you. And you may not have even declared that, but you're living it that way. Just look at your checkbook. Where's your money go? Where's your time spent? That'll tell you everything you need to know about who is first in your life. What brings you joy beyond measure? Well, my family does, Pastor Tommy. My family. I love my family. And then that is great. They're a God-given gift. But if your family is your end-all, be-all, man, it is as good as family is and as high a priority as it should be, it is not going to fill the void. If anything, for those of you who've got any age on you, you know that family can hurt just as much as the next thing. It can disappoint just as much as the career path can. It can disappoint just as much as money can. All of the things that are by no means evil and by no means bad and can and are oftentimes gifts from God. Man, when you try and substitute those and make those the reason for your life and your purpose, it disappoints. There is one thing and one person alone that fills that deep void, and it is Christ. And that's what made those wise men overjoyed. It's what gave them the ability to let go of the things that most of us would say, I can't. And they left rich. No. They left their treasures. Yeah, I get it. But they left rich. And they left full of joy. And they left with purpose. John 3:16 says this. For God so loved the world in this way, that he gave his one and only Son, so that everyone who believes in him will not perish, but will have eternal life. Man, that is the most powerful verse in the Scriptures, and it is the very heart of Christmas. And it's exactly what the Magi found, the fulfilled prophecy of the Messiah. As the angel told Joseph, he will save his people from their sins. That is the gift. You realize why we have hope this year? You realize why Christmas brings hope? It's that right there. It's the fact that Jesus was given to us by God to save us from our sins. To fill a void inside of you and me that nothing ever will. And if you are spending your life and are going through your life hoping and thinking that something else will satisfy, you are being duped. And you're playing the Herod. You're the villain of your own story. Verse 17, for God did not send his Son into the world that we might be condemned, that he might condemn the world, but that the world might be saved through him. Anyone who believes in him is not condemned. But anyone who does not believe is already condemned, because he has not believed in the name of the one and only Son of God. Jesus doesn't come and is not here to condemn you, and neither am I. But the reality is, Herod condemned himself. Herod was his own judge, jury, and executioner by seeking to destroy Jesus instead of worshiping him. By valuing his prestige and fame and his kingdom over Jesus, he condemned himself. And for some of us this morning, we condemn ourselves. The very essence of the gospel is that Jesus came to save us from our sins. And our sins, our own actions, are condemning us this morning. And you will never have joy beyond measure. Joy will elude you all your life, just as it does for each and every person that you and I talk to and attempt to share the gospel with, who will not bow the knee, but seeks to instead pursue their own kingdom, pursue their own joy. You cannot get this anywhere else. You will never find it in another person. You will not find it in the person you put a ring around their finger. You will not find it in your promotion, your next job, the founding of your business, the next house you buy, in an automobile or a piece of technology. Jesus is the only thing that will satisfy. And that is what I stand here before you to declare. I am a hope dealer, and I proclaim it right now to you. You can have eternal life. You can have joy beyond measure. It cannot be taken away. It will not fall or lose value with the economy. The government cannot mandate it away, and never can anyone break in and steal it. It is, rest assured, guaranteed by Jesus. Wisemen found that. And man, they left full of joy and security and peace. And you can walk out of these doors this morning, not as a Herod, but as a wise person. Wise as the Magi of ancient old, because you have found what matters.
Thanks again for downloading audio from Crosspoint Church. We hope that this content was supplemental at best in your spiritual growth. We believe the best way for someone to grow in their relationship with Jesus is in a local congregation of believers with like faith, passion, and direction. We hope you will go further in your exploration of Crosspoint by visiting us one Sunday at our worship gatherings. Details are on our website, crosspointga.com. God bless.